I am 81 years old as I speak these words, and my hands still tremble when I think about the night everything changed. People look at me now and see nothing but an old man with slow steps and cloudy eyes, someone whose stories belong to another time. But if they knew what I carried inside me for 4 decades, they would look at me differently. Maybe with fear, maybe with awe, maybe with disbelief, but certainly not with indifference. Back in 1984, I was 41 years old, a simple mechanic living in a forgotten corner of rural Colorado. My life was small, predictable, and quiet. Too quiet, perhaps. I worked alone in my shop, fixing the trucks of ranchers who barely knew my name. I lived in a wooden cabin at the end of a dirt road, where even coyotes hesitated to wander. And every night, after closing the garage, I drove home, listening to the static of an old radio that could barely catch a station. I'd lost my wife 2 years earlier. Cancer had taken her fast, like a thief who knew exactly where to strike. My only son had moved away, hurting from a grief he didn't know how to share. So I carried my loneliness like a coat I never took off. Life had become something I endured rather than lived. Then came the night of the storm. Lightning rolled across the mountains like white fire, splitting the sky again and again. The air tasted metallic, charged, almost unnatural. I should have stayed home. Anyone with sense would have, but an old semi had broken down on Highway 13, and the rancher who owned it needed it working by sunrise. So I grabbed my tools, stepped into my truck, and headed into the worst storm of my life. About 15 miles from town, the sky went silent, completely silent, the way it does before something catastrophic happens. For a moment, the world held its breath. Then, without warning, a green flash exploded above the tree line. Not lightning, not any lightning I had ever seen. This was thicker, brighter, almost liquid. It streaked downward, cutting through the storm clouds like a blade, and crashed into the ravine that ran parallel to the road. The ground shook beneath my tires. I slammed the brakes. The storm roared back to life, but my eyes stayed fixed on that ravine. Something had fallen, something big, and curiosity, or fate, pulled me toward it. I climbed down the slope, mud swallowing my boots, rain hitting my face like needles. The smell of burning metal filled the air. As I got closer, I realized the impact site glowed faintly, pulsing like the last heartbeat of a dying star. My chest tightened. I knew I wasn't supposed to be there. Then I saw it. Half buried in the earth lay an object the size of a small car, metallic, curved, shimmering even through the rain. It didn't look built so much as grown. Smooth, seamless, no bolts, no seams, no engine, no windshield, just a silver blue shell humming softly. My breath stopped. It was a craft, not human, not military, not from anywhere I could understand. Before I could even process what I was seeing, a sound rose from inside the wreckage, a weak, trembling whimper, not mechanical, organic, alive. I froze. Every instinct told me to run, to pretend none of this was happening. But grief had hollowed me out in the years before, and something about that small, desperate sound pierced straight through the emptiness inside me. Against every rational instinct, I pulled on the edge of the craft. Metal warm as skin shifted beneath my fingers. A crack opened, and a dim bluish light spilled out. That was when I saw him for the first time. Curled against the inner wall was a small figure, no taller than my chest, trembling violently. Large dark eyes blinked at me, terrified, shining with a fear I recognized all too well. His chest rose and fell in shallow gasps. His arm lifted weakly toward me, as if begging for help. And then the rumble of distant rotors broke the silence. Helicopters, military, they were already searching. The being looked at me, not just at me, but into me. And in that instant I understood something I cannot explain to this day. He trusted me. And without thinking, without planning, without even knowing why, I lifted that fragile, impossible creature into my arms. and ran. That was the night the sky opened, the night I stopped being just a man, the night I became a keeper of the greatest secret this country has ever tried to bury. I don't remember exactly how I managed to climb back up that muddy ravine with him in my arms. I just remember the weight, not of his body, which was lighter than it should have been, but of the choice I was making with every step I took. Rain hammered my face, blurring my vision. My boots slipped twice on the wet dirt, and each time I thought I'd drop him. But he clung to my shirt with a strength that surprised me, his fingers long and thin, almost fragile, digging into the fabric like he was holding on to the last safe thing in this world. By the time I reached my truck, the sound of helicopters was much closer. I opened the passenger door with shaking hands and laid him gently on the seat. Up close, under the dim light from the dashboard, I could see him better. His skin had a faint bluish tone, almost grey, like the color of a stormy sky. His eyes were large and dark, not like an animal's, but disturbingly human in how they searched my face. "Easy," I whispered, though I didn't know if he understood. "You're safe. For now." He exhaled a trembling breath, a strange sound somewhere between a sigh and a faint whistle. Then, for a brief second, my vision blurred, not from the rain this time, but from something else. I saw an image in my mind, a flicker, a metallic corridor, stars outside a window, the feeling of falling, panic. Then I was back in my truck, hands gripping the steering wheel. He hadn't spoken, but I felt something, a fragment of his memory, or maybe his fear. The rotors tore through the storm again, louder this time. I looked up through the windshield and saw 2 helicopters sweeping the area with searchlights, moving toward the ravine. I had 2 options: stay and wave them down, hand over the creature and tell myself it was the right thing to do, or drive away, hide him, break every law I knew existed and a few that probably hadn't even been written yet. I'd like to say I thought about it calmly, weighed the pros and cons, made a rational decision. I didn't. I turned the key and floored the accelerator. My truck roared to life and shot forward, tires slipping on the wet dirt road before catching traction and climbing back to the highway. I tried to drive like any other man going home in a storm, not too fast, not too slow, while my heart was beating so loud I could barely hear the engine. In the passenger seat, he watched me. His breathing was rough, uneven. Every time the lightning flashed, I could see thin lines along his skin, like faint bioluminescent veins pulsing under the surface. He looked both incredibly fragile and impossibly resilient at the same time. "You picked the wrong planet to crash into," I muttered under my breath. To my surprise, his head tilted slightly, as if he understood humor, or at least the tone of it. As we drove, I kept checking my rearview mirror, expecting at any moment to see headlights or military vehicles closing in. But the road behind me remained empty, swallowed by darkness and rain. The helicopters were focused on the crash site, for now. By the time I reached my property, the storm had calmed a little. Just heavy rain, no more green lights tearing the sky apart. My cabin sat at the end of a long dirt driveway, flanked by an old barn that had seen better decades. I pulled the truck behind the barn instead of parking in front of the house, out of any possible line of sight from the road or the sky. I turned to him. "I'm going to carry you inside, all right?" He didn't answer with words. Instead, once again, my vision blurred. For a second, I saw something like my own reflection in his mind. My face, tired and lined, but there was something over it, a faint glow around my chest, a sense of trust. It scared me more than the helicopters. I wrapped him in an old tarp from the back of the truck and lifted him again. He was warm, not feverish, but holding a strange, constant heat, like metal left out in the sun. I hurried through the back door of the barn, avoiding the front porch lights, and kicked the door closed behind me. Inside, the barn smelled of hay, motor oil, and old wood. Tools hung on the walls. Stacks of boxes lined one side. A small storage room sat in the back, where I kept spare parts and junk that wasn't worth throwing away. That storage room became his first hiding place. I cleared a space in the corner, dragged in an old mattress, and laid him down as gently as I could. He looked at me the entire time, eyes following every move, never blinking. When I brought him a blanket, he reached out and touched my wrist. The instant his fingers brushed my skin, images flooded my mind again. This time, clearer, a sky with 3 moons. Towers of light rising from the ground, a feeling of exploration, curiosity, duty. Then the ship shaking violently, fire, alarms, a desperate attempt to steer, a bright blue planet filling the view, and then impact. I staggered back, gripping the edge of a shelf. He slowly withdrew his hand, as if apologizing. I get it, I whispered, breathing hard. You're lost. And alone. He blinked slowly. Somewhere outside, in the distance, I heard the faint echo of helicopters again, sweeping over the hills. That was the moment I truly understood. This wouldn't be a secret for a day or a week. If I chose to hide him, I was hiding him for life. And still, I locked the barn door, shut off the lights, and walked back to the house with the weight of a whole other world on my shoulders. That night, I didn't sleep. Because somewhere out there, the government knew something had fallen from the sky. They just didn't know yet that I had already picked it up. For the first 2 days, I barely left the barn. I told work I was sick, shut off my phone, and kept every light in the house dim. The storm had passed, leaving the world soaked and heavy, the soil still carrying the memory of whatever had crashed into it. And though the helicopters eventually stopped circling the ravine, I had the uneasy feeling that eyes I couldn't see were still searching. Inside the barn, the air was thick with the scent of hay and engine grease. I spent hours sitting on an old wooden stool across from the storage room door, listening for any sign that the being inside was alive. Or worse, dying. Every few hours, I slipped into the room with food and water. Not that I knew what he could eat or if he even needed water, but I had to try. Survival was the only language we shared then. He never touched the food, but he did drink the water, cupping it awkwardly in his long fingers, as if the shape of the glass confused him. His movements were slow, cautious, and every time I came in, he watched me, unblinking, calculating, but not hostile. More curious. On the morning of the 3rd day, something changed. I had just stepped into the storage room with a fresh bucket of water when I felt a sudden warmth spread across the inside of my skull. Not painful, just startling, like stepping from shade into sunlight. I froze. He was staring at me again, but this time, I wasn't just being looked at, I was being reached. My vision blurred. Colors swirled. Then, like a page turning in a book I'd never read, an image appeared in my mind. A vast silver landscape under 3 moons. A city rising from the ground, not with buildings, but with columns of shimmering light. Figures moving between them, tall, graceful, glowing faintly, each connected by thin streams of blue energy. Then the image shifted. A starship. A crew, a mission, and one central emotion behind it all, exploration. I stumbled backward, knocking over a toolbox behind me. Metal clattered, echoing through the barn. The image vanished instantly. The warmth faded. He blinked. I breathed in short, ragged gasps, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. I saw something, I whispered, voice cracking. You showed me something. He tilted his head slightly. Not exactly a nod, but an acknowledgement. I stepped closer, slowly, carefully. Are you speaking to me? I asked. He didn't open his mouth, but the warmth returned, gentler this time, like the brush of fingers along the inside of my mind. And then came another image, a small, trembling creature lying on the floor of a spaceship, its leg broken, its skin torn, and then a hand, blue, glowing faintly, lifting it gently, healing it. Compassion. He was showing me compassion. My breath caught in my throat. I understood, with a clarity that didn't feel like my own, what he was trying to tell me. He wasn't a threat. He didn't come to conquer or harm. He came to learn, to observe, to understand, and he was afraid, terrified even. When the warmth faded again, he reached out physically this time, his hand shaky, uncertain, and touched the back of my wrist. His skin was warm, not slimy or cold, like the movies made us expect. Warm, almost human. I felt something then that surprised me more than the visions, a wave of sorrow. It washed through me so suddenly that my knees buckled. Memories not my own flashed behind my eyes, metal ripping, alarms blaring, the helpless feeling of falling, losing control, crashing onto a strange, violent planet. He was alone, hurt, and for reasons I didn't yet understand, he trusted me. "I won't let them find you," I heard myself say, voice steady despite the fear tightening my throat. "Not as long as you're under my roof." His large, dark eyes softened. For the first time since the crash, he closed them, slowly, peacefully, like someone finally allowing themselves to rest. I sat beside him for a long time, listening to the slow, rhythmic sound of his breathing. I didn't touch him again. I didn't need to. Somehow, on a level I still can't explain, we understood each other. We had formed a bond, a fragile bridge between two worlds, one built not on knowledge or power, but on trust. Outside, sometime around noon, a truck engine growled up the road. My stomach dropped. Visitors were rare. Unannounced visitors were nearly impossible. Through the cracks in the barn wall, I saw a black government SUV stop at the edge of my property. Two men stepped out, sunglasses, badges, purpose. They were here for answers, and I had just begun hiding the biggest secret of my life. The black SUV idled at the edge of my driveway, rainwater dripping from its chrome bumper. Even from inside the barn, I could feel the pressure of the men who stepped out. Like their presence carried weight, authority, the kind that made good men swallow their words and shut their doors. The alien, still resting on the mattress behind me, stirred. His eyes opened slowly, alert, intelligent, and in them I saw something unmistakable: fear. "Stay quiet," I whispered, raising a hand. "Don't make a sound." He understood, not because of language, but because fear speaks a universal tongue. I slipped out of the storage room, closing the door just enough to hide him while still being able to hear if something happened. Then I walked toward the front of the barn, wiping my hands on my jeans, forcing myself to look like a man who had simply been fixing machinery on a rainy morning. When I stepped outside, the two men were already walking toward me. Both wore dark suits, polished shoes unsuited for mud, and badges clipped to their belts. They moved with the quiet precision of people who belonged to a world the rest of us only saw in movies. "Morning," I said, keeping my voice neutral. The taller one spoke first. "Sir, we're with the Federal Aviation Authority and NORAD Joint Task Force. May we ask you a few questions?" FAA and NORAD together? That combination didn't make sense. Unless... About what? I asked, though I already knew. The shorter agent flipped open a tablet. At approximately 11:42 p.m. 2 nights ago, radar detected an unidentified aerial object descending rapidly in this region. We're conducting routine checks for debris, damage, or witness reports. My pulse quickened. I was home all night, I lied smoothly. Storm knocked out my TV. Didn't see much of anything. The taller man scanned the barn, the house, the fields. He wasn't buying my calm act, but he also had nothing to prove otherwise. "Mind if we take a quick look around your property?" he asked, tone polite but meaning iron. Yes, I said, I do mind. That made both agents pause. This part of Colorado was still old America, where property rights were sacred and a man didn't have to open his doors because someone in a suit felt entitled to look inside. They knew that. They also knew pushing too hard could get messy. We're not accusing you of anything, the shorter man said. We're simply trying to confirm that the object didn't land on private land. Well, if it had landed on my land, I said, meeting their eyes, I'm sure I'd have noticed. The tall one smiled, but not with his eyes. Sometimes people don't realize what they've seen. Storms can create illusions. Lightning can distort perception. I've been seeing storms for 40 years, I replied. I know what lightning looks like. Silence stretched between us, thick as the humid air. Finally, the taller agent took a small step closer. His voice dropped, just enough to tell me this part wasn't on any official script. Sir, we're not the only team searching. If something came down, anything unusual, you'd be safer telling us now than dealing with the people who come after. A chill crawled up my spine, not because he threatened me, but because I could tell he believed what he was saying. There's nothing here, I said, forcing the lie out. Just tools, an old barn, and a man who wants to get back to work. Both agents stared at me for a few long seconds, weighing my words, measuring my face, listening to the silence behind them, where a small extraterrestrial being was holding his breath. Finally, the shorter one closed his tablet. If you see or hear anything unusual, call this number immediately. He handed me a card. White, blank, except for a phone number. No names, no department. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. They returned to the SUV, talking quietly into radios as they drove away, the tires sending up arcs of muddy water behind them. I stayed frozen where I stood until the sound of the engine faded completely. Then I rushed back into the barn and shut the door. The alien was sitting up on the mattress, his eyes wide, glowing faintly with anxiety. When I stepped inside, a wave of feelings hit me. Not images this time, but pure emotion. Fear, urgency, danger. I know, I whispered, sitting beside him. They're looking for you, and they're not going to stop. He leaned his head slightly toward me, and for the first time I realized something with absolute certainty. He had survived the crash. He had survived the journey across stars, but he would not survive being found by us. And now, without meaning to, I had become the only thing standing between him and a world that wasn't ready for him. Not even close. For the next several weeks, my life became a strange rhythm of silence, vigilance, and secrets. By day, I pretended everything was normal. I fixed engines, I bought groceries, I waved to neighbors, I acted like a man living an ordinary life in an ordinary corner of Colorado. But every night, I returned to the barn. Eshal grew stronger with each passing day. His bioluminescence brightened, his wounds sealed completely, and his movements became more fluid, more controlled. He no longer trembled when he stood. He no longer watched me with that raw, wounded fear. Instead, he observed me with something closer to curiosity, interest, even affection. He was learning. At first, I thought he was mimicking my expressions, tilting his head when I tilted mine, blinking when I blinked, raising his eyebrows when I did. But it soon became clear it wasn't mimicry. It was comprehension. One night, while I adjusted the lantern hanging from a rafter, he tapped gently on a toolbox and pointed at a wrench. "You want me to hand you that?" I asked. He shook his head slowly. Then, with clumsy fingers, he picked up the wrench and held it out, mirroring the exact way I had done the night before when repairing a carburetor. I laughed softly. "You're learning faster than most humans?" He blinked. Once, slowly. Then an image flashed in my mind. Bursts of symbols, patterns, equations, spiraling like galaxies. Learning is survival. That was the message. Over the next days, he absorbed everything. My words, my gestures, my routines. He even tried to shape sounds again, softer this time, more deliberate. One night he managed a full, clear attempt. Gar-D, guardian. It sent a shiver down my spine. He wasn't just learning language, he was learning me. But as Eshal grew stronger, signs that the government was tightening its noose grew stronger too. Black SUVs drove past my property at odd hours. Helicopters flew lower than before, their searchlights sweeping the hills like eyes searching for a runaway shadow. One afternoon while I was in town picking up supplies, a neighbor mentioned something chilling. "Government boys asked about you. Said they're mapping the land for geological surveys. Strange thing, though. They asked if you've seen anything unusual." I played dumb. But inside, my stomach twisted. When I returned home, I parked far from the house and approached on foot. I scanned for footprints, tire tracks, anything disturbed. Everything looked normal, too normal. That night, Eshal sensed my tension immediately. As soon as I entered the barn, he reached out and placed 2 fingers lightly against my temple. A surge of calm washed through me. Not forced, not manipulative, just steadying. "Thank you," I whispered. He withdrew his hand, but kept watching me, eyes full of questions he didn't yet have words for. "They're getting closer," I said. "They're looking for you. For us." A faint glow ran along his skin, pulsing with emotion. Uncertainty, concern, maybe even guilt. Then came a vision. A long tunnel of stars. A craft drifting in silence. His world. Beautiful. Luminous. A council of beings touching hands in a circle of light, a decision, a mission, a journey far longer than I had ever imagined. And then, a bright blue planet, Earth. When the vision ended, I understood something new. He hadn't just crashed here, he had been sent, not to invade, not to conquer, to observe, to learn, to understand humanity, but something had gone wrong. Badly wrong. His mission had become a survival story, and now I was part of it. "Eshal," I murmured, sitting beside him on the old barn floor. "If they find you, they're not going to treat you like a guest or a scientist. They'll treat you like a threat, and I can't let that happen." He looked at me, deeply, intently, and a single emotion hit my mind. Trust, unconditional, absolute. It almost broke me. I had lost my wife. I had lost my son. I had lost my purpose. But now, somehow, I had become someone's entire lifeline. As the night deepened, a faint mechanical hum vibrated through the air. Helicopters. Close this time. Very close. I put a finger to my lips and killed the lantern. The barn sank into darkness. Through the cracks in the wood, a sweeping beam of white light cut across the fields. Eshal crouched low, glowing faintly with fear. The search was no longer theoretical. They were right above us. And I realized then, with devastating clarity, it was only a matter of time before they found out the truth, that I wasn't hiding debris. I was hiding a living being from another world, and the government does not stop looking for things like that. Ever. The searchlights passed over my property 3 times that night. Slow, methodical sweeps that felt less like reconnaissance and more like a warning. They were closing in. When the last helicopter finally drifted away, swallowed by the black sky, I let out the breath I'd been holding for what felt like years. My knees ached from crouching. My palms were slick with sweat. Every nerve in my body was screaming. And yet, beside me, Eshal remained perfectly still, not frozen with fear, not panicked, just listening. His bioluminescent veins pulsed faintly like quiet thought. "They won't stop," I whispered into the darkness. "They're getting closer every day." He turned his head toward me, and for a moment I felt something inside my mind shift, like a door unlocking. Another wave of emotion hit me, not fear, not surrender, resolve. He stood up slowly, his movement steady, almost graceful. Then he walked to the center of the barn and placed one hand on the wooden floorboards. "What are you doing?" I whispered hoarsely. No answer. A soft hum filled the air, so faint I might have missed it if the night hadn't been so deadly quiet. Then a glow radiated from his palm, spreading across the floor like ripples of blue light. The wood trembled under my boots. My heart jerked in my chest. "Stop! Someone might see that!" But the light didn't leak out of the barn. Instead, it folded inward, almost as if it were sinking into the earth itself. Then everything went dark again. He turned back toward me, and for the first time he spoke, not with broken sounds or forced human mimicry, but with a voice that resonated both in the air and inside my mind. "Hide!" I froze. It wasn't perfect English, more like a single shard of a language he had pieced together through our time together, but the meaning hit me like a hammer. "What did you do?" I whispered. He blinked slowly, and another image bloomed behind my eyes. The barn, surrounded by swirling blue energy. The infrared signature of the building turning black, invisible. The heat signatures inside, mine and his, vanishing like breath on a mirror. He had masked us, completely. A tear slipped down my cheek before I could stop it. "You protected us," I said, my voice trembling. "You saved us." He stepped closer, his eyes glowing faintly. I felt a surge of warmth travel through me, gratitude deep and sincere. But beneath it was something else, a warning. The visions that followed came sharp and fragmented. Black vehicles, men in tactical gear, guns, metal restraints, cold laboratory rooms, instruments not meant for healing. And then, him, trapped, surrounded by harsh white lights and voices shouting commands he didn't understand. I staggered back. No, they can't. But the truth burned into my mind. If the government found him, they wouldn't treat him as a scientific marvel. They would treat him as an asset, a specimen, a weapon, a threat. I sank onto an overturned crate, my breath coming too fast. "I can't let that happen to you," I muttered. "I won't." Eshel approached me and placed a hand against my chest. The moment he touched me, a new wave of emotion washed through me, stronger than anything before. Not fear, not warning, compassion, connection, bond. Then came a final, startling image. Me, older, grayer, sitting in the same barn 40 years later. He was still there, alive, with me. A lifetime, a promise. When the vision faded, I looked into his eyes and understood. He wasn't asking for protection out of fear. He saw me as something more, as someone whose fate was now woven into his. A guardian, a companion, a link between worlds. But the danger outside was sharpening. The next morning, when I stepped out of the barn, 2 black SUVs were parked at the far end of the road, both facing my property. Waiting, watching. I forced myself to walk to the mailbox as if nothing were wrong, but every step felt like I was crossing the edge of a cliff. Back inside the barn, Eshel stood silently, sensing everything. "They're not just searching anymore," I whispered. "They're hunting." His skin glowed faintly in response, not with fear, with preparation. He wasn't just healing, he was getting ready. And for the first time since the crash, I began to understand. Eshel wasn't here by accident. He wasn't weak. He wasn't helpless. He was something far more remarkable and far more dangerous than anything the government could possibly imagine. And the world was not ready for him, not even close. By the time dawn broke the next morning, the government SUVs were still parked at the far end of the road. They hadn't moved an inch. Their windshields reflected the rising sun like the eyes of predators waiting for their prey to make a mistake. I knew then that the search was no longer an operation. It was a siege. Inside the barn, Eshel stood near the wall, sensing the tension through me as clearly as if it were a storm rolling overhead. The blue glow beneath his skin pulsed slower now. Not from weakness, but from calculation. He was thinking, planning. "We can't stay here," I whispered. "They'll come onto the property. It's only a matter of time." A wave of emotion hit my mind, concern, warning, urgency. He knew it too. I spent the next few hours making preparations. I checked the back roads leading out of my land. I walked the perimeter looking for cameras, drones, footprints, anything that suggested the government had already entered without my knowledge. And there it was. A black device the size of a baseball, half buried behind a bush near the barn. A remote sensor, heat detection, motion detection, something more advanced than both, maybe. I crushed it under my boot. When I returned to the barn, Eshal approached me with an intensity I had never seen. He placed his hand on my temple, and a vision rushed forward like a wave breaking over rocks, snow-covered mountains, caves, tunnels deep beneath the earth, a place where machines could not see him, where no radar would reach, where light itself seemed to bend differently, a safe place. He was showing me where he wanted to go. "I can take you there," I whispered, "but we need to get past the roadblock." Eshel blinked once, and the faint glow under his skin brightened, just slightly, like a torch being raised in a dark cave. Then he lifted both hands and made a slow, circular motion in the air. The barn lights flickered. My vision wavered. And something impossible happened. I couldn't see him. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes, looked again. He was right in front of me. I could feel it, but my eyes slipped off him like he was a shadow refusing to be caught. What are you doing?" I breathed. He let the illusion drop, and slowly his form came back into view. The psychic message that followed was simple, but the meaning hit me like cold water. Hide, you too, invisible. I swallowed hard. "You can do that to me?" He nodded once. Another vision formed, not clear imagery this time, but a sense of bending light, of distorting attention, of slipping unnoticed through the corner of the human mind. Not invisibility, something deeper, a kind of mental misdirection. Before I could react, the hum of engines rolled across the property. I stepped to the crack in the barn wall and saw a startling sight. The two SUVs from earlier were now joined by a third. 3 agents stepped out, not the polite type from before. These were tactical, armored vests, holstered weapons, mirrored sunglasses. They walked straight toward my house. My breath froze. They were coming in, and they would search everything. I turned to Eshel. "It's time." He stepped forward and placed both hands gently on my temples. A warmth swept through me, spreading down my neck across my chest, into my limbs. My skin tingled. My vision shimmered. Then, quiet, like the world had inhaled and refused to exhale. I looked down at my hands. Nothing seemed different, but outside, when one agent swept his gaze across the barn window, his eyes moved right past it, vacant, uninterested, as if something inside his mind nudged him toward looking elsewhere. Eshel pulled his hands away. I didn't feel invisible, but I felt unnoticed, overlooked, protected. He gestured toward the back door. We slipped out silently, moving behind the barn, keeping low. Through the trees, I watched the agents break into my house, not knocking, not asking, just forcing their way inside like they owned it. They tore through the living room, opened cabinets, pulled up floorboards. Eshal and I kept moving, step by step, tree by tree, staying within the soft veil of his psychic shield. Every so often, he would pause and place a hand on my back, reinforcing the effect. It felt like a pulse of warm air, invisible but powerful. When we reached the far end of the property, I stopped. "Eshal," I whispered breathlessly, "your safe place. How far?" He projected another vision: mountains, caves, a journey west, hundreds of miles. My heart pounded. We'll need supplies, food, fuel, everything. He touched my chest gently. And for the first time, I didn't see visions. I heard something, a single word, not spoken aloud, but unmistakably clear. Together. My throat tightened. He wasn't asking me to lead him. He was asking me to come with him. And in that moment, as my home was being torn apart by men searching for truths the world wasn't ready to face, I realized something simple and terrifying. Leaving wasn't running. Leaving was surviving. Together. We left my property at dusk, Eshel walking beside me with a quiet determination that didn't match his slender frame. The veil he cast over us shimmered faintly, invisible to the eye, but tangible as a warm current flowing over my skin. As long as we stayed close, the world seemed to overlook us, glancing past without registering anything unusual. But the world was getting louder. Helicopters crisscrossed the sky. Drones buzzed faintly in the distance. Military trucks took up positions along the highway like metal thorns. The government wasn't searching anymore. It was hunting. We cut through fields, moved along forest ridgelines, and avoided roads entirely. My legs burned, my lungs ached, and the cold mountain air bit into my bones. But beside me, Eshel never faltered. His steps were steady, fluid, almost rhythmic, as if he was walking to a memory of home. When darkness settled fully, we reached an abandoned ranger station. The roof was half collapsed and the windows were covered in dust, but it offered shelter from the wind. I helped Eshel inside and closed the door. Only then did I allow myself to breathe. "We can rest here," I whispered. He nodded slightly, not human, but unmistakably grateful. I sat on the cracked floor, leaning against a wall. Hours of fear and exhaustion crashed over me like a tidal wave. My hands shook. My heart throbbed against my ribs. The weight of what I had done, leaving my home, becoming a fugitive, protecting someone the world would fear, settled on my shoulders. And then he touched my hand. A soft pulse entered my mind. Not a vision, a question. Why? Why risk everything? Why leave your life? Why protect someone who is not of your world? I swallowed hard. "Because you trusted me," I said. "Because you were alone. Because I saw you were scared and hurt. And because I lost my family once. I won't lose someone again." He lowered his head slightly, touched by something deeper than words. But then the warmth in my mind shifted, darkened, and a new image forced itself forward, sharp, vivid, unintentional, a starship in orbit. Beings like him gathered around a console, a glowing sphere showing Earth, a symbol flashing in red, a decision made in haste, a mission launched with urgency, a sense of fear, not for him, but for us. The vision snapped away, leaving me breathless. I stared at him. "You weren't sent here just to study us, were you?" His eyes widened, caught, surprised, maybe even ashamed. "Eshel, what was your mission?" He stepped back, his glow dimming. For the first time since we met, he projected hesitation, even dread. But the truth pressed forward, bleeding through his defenses. Earth is in danger, a threat not human, a timeline shrinking, a warning unspoken. My skin went cold. I gripped his shoulders. What threat? From where? Another vision hit me so hard I fell to my knees. A massive shadow drifting through space, a structure, planet-sized, geometric, unnatural. Tendrils of dark energy spiraling outward like roots searching for prey. Stars dimming in its path. Worlds falling silent. Then Earth, vulnerable, unprepared, exposed. My breath stopped. "Dear God," I whispered. "You came to warn us." Eshel trembled, not from fear for himself, but from fear for me, for humanity. He hadn't meant to show me this. He'd planned to learn our language, understand our leaders, make contact carefully. The crash had ruined everything. We were running not just from the government, but from the truth the government desperately wanted to uncover. I looked into his eyes, those deep, dark windows, to a world infinitely older than ours. "Why me?" I asked. "Why show this to me?" He pressed his forehead gently to mine. A surge of emotion filled me. "Because you listened. Because you cared. Because you are the first human who saw me as alive." My throat tightened. Outside, a mechanical hum rolled across the mountains. Drones. Close. Eshal's glow brightened suddenly. Urgent. Warning. The vision that hit me next was crystal clear. Agents flooding the ranger station. Guns drawn. Me on the ground. Eshal in restraints. A transport vehicle. A metal room. Bright lights. And then, his light snuffed out. He projected one last message, desperate and forceful. "We must leave. Now." I grabbed my pack, slung it over my shoulder, and helped him to his feet. "What direction?" I asked. He pointed west, toward the deepest, most remote part of the mountains, toward the caves he had shown me, toward whatever future awaited us. As we stepped out into the freezing night, a searchlight swept across the treetops. The government wasn't hours away anymore. They were minutes away, and for the first time since this ordeal began, I realized that if they caught us now, the world would lose more than a visitor from another star. It would lose its only warning. We ran through the forest as if the earth itself were shaking beneath our feet. Branches whipped against my face, roots caught my boots, and every breath tore through my lungs like fire. But behind us, the mechanical hum grew louder, sharper, more focused. They were tracking us now, not the property. Us. Eshal kept pace effortlessly. His movements were fluid, almost weightless, his bioluminescent veins glowing brighter with every surge of fear that crossed my mind. He wasn't panicking, but he was preparing. The sky above us pulsed with searchlights. Drones buzzed like angry insects, radios crackled faintly through the trees, voices grew louder. "Sector Delta secure, moving to thermal sweep. Track the signatures, whatever anomaly we detected is close. Thermal, heat signatures." The psychic veil Eshal cast wasn't going to hold much longer. We reached a ridge overlooking a valley blanketed in darkness. Far below, the mouth of a cavern waited like a whisper of hope. The same cavern he had shown me in visions, deep, ancient, untouched. "Are we going inside?" I asked, breathless. He didn't answer. Instead, he touched my shoulder and projected a soft but unmistakable message. "Stop. Wait. Listen." So I did, and I heard it. Not helicopters, not drones, something deeper. A distant vibration spreading through the ground, humming up through my boots, flowing into the air like a strange melody. The trees swayed without wind. The air thickened. My ears popped. "What is that?" I whispered. Eshal stepped forward, raised both hands toward the sky, and the world changed. A blinding column of pale blue light erupted from the valley floor, rising straight into the sky like a spear made of starlight. The mountains vibrated. The drones above malfunctioned instantly, spiraling out of formation. Agents shouted through radios, their voices frantic and fragmented. "Unidentified energy surge. Everything's down. We've lost readings. What the hell is happening?" I stumbled backward, shielding my eyes. "Eshal, what are you doing?" He turned toward me, not frightened, not hesitant, but serene. His eyes glowed brighter than I had ever seen, reflecting the blue column behind him like twin galaxies. A single word filled my mind. Calling. And then I understood. He wasn't just hiding from the government, he was summoning something. Or someone. A low rumble filled the sky. Clouds twisted in unnatural spirals, pulled toward the beam of light as if the heavens themselves were bending. For a terrifying moment, I thought the threat he warned me about, the cosmic terror that consumed worlds, had arrived early. But then I saw it. A small point of white light descending gently through the sky, growing brighter, larger, more defined, not crashing, not falling, arriving. A craft unlike anything human, smooth, luminous, silent, hovered above the valley, its shape shifting like liquid metal reflecting an unseen sun. No flames, no engines, no sound, just presence. Agents on the ridge behind us froze. Some dropped their weapons, others shouted into radios that no longer worked. My breath caught in my throat. He had called his people. He had called home. Eshal stepped toward me and placed his palm against my chest, right over my heart. His touch radiated warmth, gentle and steady, and a wave of emotion washed over me. Gratitude, connection, farewell. "No," I whispered, grabbing his hand. "Don't leave me, please, don't leave." Images flashed in my mind, the same ones he had shown me before, but clearer now. Me, older, alone in the barn, watching the night sky. Carrying a secret no one would ever believe, protecting his memory, guarding his truth. His message formed with heartbreaking clarity. Your world needs time. You need to live. I need to go. He stepped back, and the blue glow around him intensified. The beam of light rippled, widening, welcoming him. The craft above descended slightly, its hull shimmering with recognition. Agents opened fire. Bullets tore through the air, but every single one dissolved inches from the light, evaporating into dust, not a shield. A part of him, a part of his home. I reached out helplessly as he walked toward the beam. "Eshal." He turned one last time. He raised his hand, and a single final word echoed through my mind: Guardian. Then he stepped into the light. His form dissolved. Not violently, not painfully, but gently, like mist rising in morning sunlight. The blue column pulled upward, carrying him toward the craft. When the beam withdrew, the ship ascended silently into the clouds. Within seconds, it was gone. The light vanished, the vibration faded, and the night became achingly, devastatingly quiet. Agents rushed forward, shouting, searching, scanning, but there was nothing left to find. He had escaped them. All that remained was me, a man standing alone on a ridge, heart broken open, watching the sky where a friend from another world had vanished forever. For 40 years I kept his secret, not out of fear, out of love. He trusted me with the truth before anyone else. And now, at 81 years old, as I feel my own time growing short, I tell this story not for proof, not for glory, but for one reason. Because he was real, because he mattered, because he may one day return. And when he does, I hope humanity will be ready for him, and for the warning he came to give us. If my story moved you, if something in it made your heart race or your mind wonder about what else might be out there, then please do one thing for me. Tap the like button so I know you're still here with me. Hit the hype button to help this story reach more people. And now I want a sign from you. A simple one. Type the word Starlight in the comments. That single word tells me you stayed with me until the very end, and that you believe, even just a little, that we are not alone. And before you go, tell me where in the world you're listening from. Your city, your country. I read every single comment. Thank you for sharing this journey with me. Until the next story, stay curious.